Hello and welcome to Nitro Talk. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Mac 28 6-port, apparently, an engine that has gotten a very bad rap by me. We'll get into that. If you're into nitro engines, nitro vehicles, anything at all to do with the nitro side of the RC hobby, I'd love a like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you very much. So the Mac 28. This here is the older version with basically the same carburetor and pull start as the Hyper 21. There's a new version. I don't know how new it is. It's pretty old as well. This is the really old, the first version of the Mac 28. But the newer version has the COPS pull starter, and it has the newer Habayao 3-needle carb as opposed to the older Habayao 3-needle carb that comes on the Hyper 21, the older Hyper 21. The new Hyper 21s come with that carb as well. It almost looks like my lens was dirty there. All right. But we're doing, this is the old version, so we're going to be doing the old carb. Now, why did this engine get a bad rap by me? Because of that carb. The Hyper 21 carb, this carb is infamous for leaking, especially the mid needle. They get a lot of times. If I grab one of these carbs that's older and the O-rings have not been messed with, you throw a screwdriver on that bit. You don't even need a screwdriver. You don't even need to stick your nail in it to turn it. The friction of just sticking your finger on it, you could spin that needle. Just no friction on it whatsoever. The O-rings that came in these originally shrank over the years if they weren't maintained. I'm sure if you could have molly-coated them, they'd stay good, but they were, left to their own devices. They shrank, and then that mid-speed needle, the others, but to a much lesser extent. The main problem was that third mid needle. But because of that, a Hyper 21 and the Mac 28 both gave me just the biggest problems when I was early in my nitro years. My first year, let's say, my cutting teeth days in nitro. They both just stymied the heck out of me. Now, I don't think I could really get the Hyper 21 to run at all. But I did get the Mac 28 to run. It just ran like absolute garbage. And now the Hyper 21, I was actually able to redeem myself on that one by running another one a couple years back after I learned O-ring maintenance, and it ran fabulous with this carb. So, but I ran the Mac 28 once. I hated it and have not ran it since. So for a long time, I was of the opinion that the Mac 28 was garbage. But I have since realized, for a couple reasons. Number one, I realized that the carb was the issue, and I have since, figured out the carb. And second, I know a lot of other people, I actually, someone was running one of these in a truggy at the track a while back, and I talked to him about it. He loved it. Everyone I talked to who ran a Mac 28 loved it. I couldn't find another bad opinion of it. So I'm sure, even though I have not experienced it myself, I'm sure that this engine, now that this carburetor, the original carburetor on it, has been redone. It is freshly O-ringed and moly coated. All the needles have nice tension. This carb is ready to go. I guarantee that this engine will now run like a top. So that's the Mac 28 story. Let's take a look, see, huh? All right, so as you can see there, this is the head and yeah, a lot of my older heads, and I'll show you, I have not yet done my video on the Racer's Edge Surefire 32. That right there is another very special engine to me, because that was the second engine that I owned. The first Nitro, well, I don't want to get too deep into the weeds. After I got one started, I had owned a Nitro engine years back, but I never got it started, so I don't think that one counted. The first engine I got started was a GS B01 engine from a GS Storm, and so that got me into Nitro. And so the second engine I ever owned, after that point, was the Racer's Edge Surefire 32, and I loved that engine. I used it for a long time, and a few monster trucks. So anyways, but you'll see it, and it breaks my heart. The cooling head scratched up. That's where I'm going with this. Back in the days, and yeah, I knew of the, you know what it was? It was, what's the word I'm looking for? I knew to put the zip ties on the head to protect the head, right? I was aware of the zip tie trick. But I thought I just was that good with the trigger. I was out testing stuff, right? And I wasn't trying to wheelie or flip it, you know what I mean? I was just out testing engines. I wasn't trying to bash around. But every friggin' time I'd take a corner too quick or hit, too much acceleration, and I'd flip it and scratch the head and be like, dang it, Todd, why didn't you just put I didn't want to take the time. 4 zip ties around it, right? 2-3 minutes. I didn't want to do it. I wanted to run the engine and test it, and you know what I mean. I was a dummy. I don't do that anymore. I learned a hard lesson on a few cooling heads that I scratched up, and I don't do that anymore. I do not run a nice unscratched cooling head. I don't run. Anyways, my Surefire 32 also has a scratched head, and it's actually a replacement head. The original head was scratched up. I bought a brand new head for it. I caught a good deal. Put the brand new head on it and flipped it and scratched that one. Yes, holy crap. I hate the fact that I have done such stupid things in the past. I'm not beyond doing stupid stuff. All right, 8 minutes. Enough rambling. Let's take a look. So that's the head that was on this one when I ran it. I also have a brand new Mac 28 head right here. It look good down in there. All right. Well, let's start with the crankcase. Now, the crankcase appears to be the newer style. I don't know if they had an older style Mac 28 crankcase, but the Hyper 21 had the older style and the newer style, which looks just like this one. It says Hyper on the side, made in Taiwan. Pretty big fins on it for a crankcase. Looks like we got a Japanese bearing, but it looks like we have a dent on the shield there. See that? That's not good. Steel in the rear. I might see that. I think it's like a mold mark right there in the middle of the exhaust port. On a few engines, you'll see that little crack looking mark there. Steel pinch bolt. Oh, you know what? I wanted to show a little trick. I don't, you know, I need to do a separate video with all the little tricks because let's say, I'm doing the Mac 28 video. So if I show a little trick in here, how are you going to know to find that little trick unless you watch the Mac 28 video? You know what I mean? But the trick is, I'd wanted to mention this. I had realized it a while back, and I was like, oh, I want to tell people that. So let me get this pinch bolt lined up right. Okay, so and so here it is. If you have a carb, right, you loosen the bolt and you go to take the carb off and it's stuck, right? Before you start wrenching, pulling, yanking real hard, trying to twist it really hard, before you do that, after you notice that it's stuck, try this. You have just, so you unscrew it, right, to loosen it, right? So now it's certainly loose, okay? You see the bolt sticking up. You feel the carb, you feel that it is stuck on there. Before you start wrenching hard, take the screw and push it in. Sometimes you might have to, put something on it and give it a little tap, but it's basically like unfreezing the pinch bolt from the position that it is in. A lot of times that will free the carb and you don't have to fight it and gouge it, because the pinch bolt is like, sticking out into the chamber there. That's why it's stuck. A lot of times, not every time. But anyways, there's that little tip for you. Crankcase, kind of standard. Not a whole lot going on with it. Decent work. I had noticed, like when I'm looking at sleeves, right? It's pretty much always, it's good looking work, really good looking work. I like every now and then to, not everything the same. I like a little bit of variance. All right, that was the crankcase for the Mac 28 Hyper. I like the fact that this comes with a turbo head button. Not a whole lot of 28s are turbo. Of course, there certainly are plenty of them, but there's a lot more standard plug 28s than there are turbo 28s. So it says 28T on it right there. You have a cutout, and the 28T, I guess you could use for direction. And even though it is a turbo plug, it looks in need of a Todd turbo. The plug is like sticking up into the combustion chamber. On a turbo plug, that should be dead smooth on the bottom. But doesn't it look like that plug is sticking up a little bit? Don't like that. But nice, beautiful metal on this. Very nice aluminum. Oh, this also, I want to mention, has been in the bath. This one was another filthy one. I just made a video on doing cleaning an engine in an ultrasonic bath. So this one was filthy. I ultrasonic bathed it prior to doing the video here. So this is all freshly ultrasonic cleaned, so everything's spotless. This engine has, look at the crank. You see some witness mark on the end. You definitely see some markage along in there. I'd say this engine probably has 3 gallons or so on it, somewhere in there, 3-4 gallons maybe, 2 to 4, we'll call it. All right, so that was our turbo head button. Our head shims are super thin, super narrow. Have 1, 3 aluminum, 1 brass, and a 3 aluminum, 0.4 millimeter shim stack. Now this also, like the Hyper 21, has the turbo one-way bearing. It has those fan blades that, as it spins, supposedly creates a turbo effect, and also super clean and good looking. But that's the turbo one-way bearing. Let's go ahead and take a look at that carb. We've looked at it before. It's the classic Hyper 21 3-needle carburetor that I hated the guts of for years, but then now have grown to like it, just like pretty much every carb. Really, there aren't really, I've come to find, my opinion, there aren't really bad carburetors, just bad O-rings. Once you lubricate and if needed, replace all the O-rings in a carburetor, they pretty much all work great, I've found. Silicone boot, love it. That's the Hyper 3-needle. That is the old school Hyper 21 Turbo. That's what they're talking about right there. That's what they're referring to when they say turbo. I'm sure I put that piece of purple fuel tubing on there. You know, I don't think that shaft is built into there, but it's in there. Oh, no. Yeah, that's the starting shaft right there. Does come out of the pull start. And go ahead and take a peek. Oh, what the heck happened there? How in the heck did that happen? So that's our piston. That's what I just noticed. How'd that dent happen? Oh, you know what? Did my pusher do that? I had to push this. Did I push this one up? It was stuck, and I used my pusher on it, which I have protected so no metal will damage. Oh, okay, that's the piston, not the sleeve. You know what? Okay, I'm thinking that the sleeve is what I catch, and okay, so that wasn't my pusher, because to even get at it, I have to push the piston almost all the way up and out of the way. That's for me to get my pusher in there, I have to rotate the crank up to this corner, up and out of the way, and then I can get this edge of the sleeve with the pusher and push it up. That's what I use for stuck sleeves. So I don't, oh, okay, you know what? Let's put it in position. So that's the rear. All right, and that's how I come at it. I come through the rear. So right about here is where my pusher would hit to push the sleeve up. Let's see if that damage on the piston lines up to that spot. All right, so cut out towards the front. No, that's dead center. That damage to the piston is dead center. And certainly that's not where I grab with the pusher, because that's where the rod is. You know, I have to come way over to this side to push on it. So no, that damage is not from my pusher. So what is it from? It's a little dent. It's pushed inward, not outward, so it won't affect anything really. It won't affect, it won't damage the sleeve. I mean, it's been in there the whole time. I think that probably happened when I was disassembling this engine years ago. Maybe I did it somehow, I don't know. But it's interesting little bend on the bottom of that piston there. I don't know where it came from. Let's go ahead and look at this piston and rod since we have it in our hands here. It's very nicely, very meaty down at the bottom, nice and thick. And we got a very, very nice knife edge. That right there is a very nice knife edge. I like it a lot. 2 oil grooves, flat top. Looks like the top's been done. This engine, like I said, it's got 2 to 4 gallons on it, somewhere in there. Still has really great compression, great pinch. Put this piston in. Always when you're putting the piston and sleeve together to check the pinch, always rotate it to the position that it normally is, when it's in the engine. So cut out towards the front, and as we see, yeah, that catches nice and low. That's still got really good pinch. All right. Crank is a single fang. It is opened up. It is pretty big. Got a shark fin on the leading edge. Kind of your standard mid-level crank. No drill, fill, and slug, of course, but all the other goodies. Shark fin, nicely opened up, nice fang, and a pretty good-looking induction window. Now, you'll hear me notice, or you'll hear me say that's a nice cut on the leading edge of the induction window, right? What I'm referring to is the thickness of this ledge right here. Now this particular one, it almost, you see how the trailing edge, you see how that line right there is thinner. Let me get, I wish I had some better light. All right, so yeah, you see that? That ledge right there is thinner than the one on the other side. See how that ledge there is that thick and that ledge is thinner. This is the one that you want thin. This is the leading edge right here. It spins that way. So this is the edge that needs to cut through the air. So when I usually say it's a very nice cut on the leading edge, but this one isn't. It's kind of flat right there. It's got like a flat spot on top. You want that nice and sharp to cut through the air. Right there, okay, right there. Right there is a good shot where you can see them both, and you can see the width of them. You can see that this one is thinner than that one, very minutely, but you can tell. Decent little ramp right there, nice ledge. Other than that, thick wall right there, which I don't really like, but that's no big deal. That's just me being picky. Perfectly fine. Got our other goodies, decent crank. Our back plate has a really thin orange O-ring mounted at the base, not in a groove, just sitting at the base. Has a brass and no O-ring going through the back plate. And there is a washer that sits right there when the engine's assembled. That's everything. We looked at the head. Yeah, we looked at the beautiful shine cuts on this thing, although kind of sharp. This thing could almost cut you. It's a little, those edges are a little sharp. We did look at the piston. We did everything. Now, all right. Now, let's talk about this, right? Now, for any engine to be an even number, right? So inherently, sleeves should be odd numbered, right? Because you have a one port, you never count the exhaust, okay? No one counts the exhaust. Different people count ports different ways. But as far as I know, nobody counts the exhaust. The exhaust isn't a port, it's an outlet. All right, so these are the ports. So inherently, sleeves should have odd numbers of ports. A single intake in the front, and if there's one on each side, that's 3. If there's 2 on each side, that's 5. If there's 3 on each side, that's 7. Odd numbers, right? The only way to get an even number with your port count is to have 2 intake ports, 2 boost ports in the front, and count them as 2. A lot of companies do not. They have a split. You could call that a split intake port or twin intake ports. But a lot of companies, even if they have 2 there, will count the intake port as 1 port. So, like I'm saying, they call this a 6-port because it has twin intake ports and they count them as 2. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for a 6-port, and not the exhaust, never the exhaust. So that's my little rant on port counting. Odd numbers are inherently, you know what I mean? I guess it is 2 ports. So I don't have a problem with them counting that as 2 ports. I only have a problem that some people count it as 1. That's my issue. Decide whether 2 intake ports, 2 boost ports, is 1 port or 2, and make it, you know what I mean, level across the board. All right, I'm done. Let's take a look at that 6-port sleeve with its twin intake ports, and both pretty large. Both of those are nice large intake ports. Oh yeah, where I was going before on remind me, like you could do that, to talk about the really nice work comment I made earlier. All right, there's our intake ports, twin, 2 of them, nicely ramped, looking pretty good. All right, cut back and peek our exhaust real quick. It does not have a peak in the center. It does have pretty deep dog ears. Off to the sides. And of course, smaller at the bottom than the top. Good looking exhaust. I like the exhaust. Exhaust looks good on this thing. Where I have an issue, though, is these side ports. Let's look at the one on this side. Okay, you almost kind of see it kind of droops towards the rear, right? It kind of, you know what? You give you some contrast behind it. So maybe you could see better. Where the heck's my blocker? All right, we're blocked and we got contrast. So look at the bottom of that port, how it's kind of rounded, not perfectly flat, right? The square port. Now look at the one on the other side. That one is perfectly flat at the bottom. It's a perfect flat square, right? See that? A little rectangle. Perfectly flat at the bottom. Now let's go back to the other one. And you can see that rounded, curved bottom. So I finally get to say that's some crappy work on a sleeve. I'm pretty much always blowing everyone up saying, oh, they're such great work, which it generally is. Most sleeves have really good work. But this one, I finally found some imperfections. All right, so we looked at the front and the rear. Let's go ahead and look at this side. And this is the funky one. This is the one with the rounded bottom. And it also even has a little chunk taken out of the corner up there, if you could see that. So yeah, a couple little imperfections on this sleeve. We got the long port next to the exhaust where the fang would go, and like the rectangular Schnurly port, side port right next to it. This side looks a lot better. That port, that Schnurly side port is better, and those are ramped. Not the long ones, but the rectangle ones are both ramped. Just, not the best work. This sleeve leaves a little to be desired, let's say. Not the most beautiful job. But, like I said, a lot of people really love this engine. Hey, that's something I would love to hear your opinions on the Mac 28. If you've ran it yourself, drop me a line down there. Let me know what you think. of the Mac 28. And I do intend to run this thing at some point. Next time I get a monster truck going, it'll be on the short list of monster truck engines to try. I want to give it another chance. Always spin your sleeve as you're putting it in. There we go. Throw our shims on here. Always aluminum shim down and brass or copper shim on the engine side. Aluminum on the head button side, and brass or copper on the sleeve side. And throw this. I don't like these ones. I kind of like a hole on top that you can just drop the screw into, as opposed to these long cutouts that sometimes the screw can kind of catch on the way down and you know, stick. You got to pull it out and put it back in. All right, the Mac 28. I've went through most. I've done the Hyper. Have I done? I know I've done. Yeah, I believe I have done a standard Hyper 21 3-port with a pull start, and I've also done the Hyper 21 8-port with a bump start. So I've done most of the. Have I done the new? That's the one I might not have done yet. Or maybe I have. The newer OFNA Hyper 21 3-port, like the race version with turbo plug and bump start. I'm not sure if I've done all 3 of those yet. Oh yeah, I didn't put my oil on the piston. I put my after run oil blend, which is Marvel Mystery Oil and WD-40. You know, for the longest time, I thought it was my own proprietary blend that I came up with. But then I watched a Adam Drake video where he was talking about making it. And I was like, did I get that from watching him somehow, and then forgot that I saw him do it and thought that I made it up? I don't know what happened there, but Adam Drake certainly is hip to half Marvel Mystery Oil and half WD-40. That's what he uses as well. And I doubt that I came up with it all by myself without any outside input. All right, so our back plate on 2.5s on the back plate. I like that. I really like that, as opposed to 2 millimeters on the back plate. Yeah, I did not forget to put that washer in there. I'm notorious for forgetting stuff like that. Having to think, what's the one? There's something that over and over again I'd like always forget to do and have to go back and take something apart and put it in. What the heck is that? I can't remember. Back plate, it's not as important as the cooling head, but I still like to do it, the crisscross style, you know what I mean? Just tighten them down, not tight, just till they touch, and then go back and grip them. All right, so on our pull start, And, oh, you know what? What the heck, y'all? I'm sorry. Now, I had before pulled out my, got it right here. And I was actually using it earlier and remarking to myself that, why am I hand doing all this stuff in the videos when I could be doing it much, much faster. So now, okay, while I'm doing this, I could say a word on that. You do not want to use a power tool to put your head button screws in because you can't really feel that point where they touch, and you can over torque them onto there individually. If you just put one screw in a cooling head and over torque it, you could damage, warp that head, and that is not good at all. So I'm cool with removing the screws via power tool, but you really don't want to put them in on the head button. And I'm being really careful putting them in on the pull start even. All right, just till they touch, and then give them a snug by hand. All right, and we're down to, got to push that pinch bolt back where it goes because I had pushed it over. All righty. Quick little snug, not crazy tight on the pinch bolts, just till it catches. Little snug, and that carb ain't going nowhere. All right, that right there is the Mac 28 6-port, even though it says Hyper 21 Turbo. Again, this is the old style. The newer one has the cops on it. But let's go ahead and see how she pops. Boy, that has a lot of compression. Yanked it right out of my hand. Oh yeah, nice and really nice and poppy. That's the the Mac 28 6-port that says Hyper. Thank you very, very much for watching. Have a great day. We'll see y'all next time. More engines, more vehicles, more stuff. Have a great one.